Standing in my driveway at 3 in the morning, I watched Karen's smug face glow in the headlights as the tow truck hauled away my late father's vintage motorcycle. "You should have read the new parking rules more carefully," she sneered. Little did she know, I had security footage of her changing those rules after I'd already parked. This was war. My hands trembled as I held the eviction notice. 30 days to leave the home where my daughter took her first steps, where my father spent his final Christmas, all because I dared to paint my front door the wrong shade of blue. My name is Marcus Chun, and I've lived in Riverside Gardens for 12 years. This community used to be a place where neighbors actually knew each other's names, where kids played street hockey until the streetlights came on, and where the biggest controversy was whose turn it was to host the annual block party. That all changed 6 months ago when Karen Whitmore bought the corner mansion and immediately got herself elected to the HOA board. I should have seen the warning signs. During her campaign, Karen went door to door with a leather-bound binder full of community improvement initiatives. She spoke about property values and curb appeal with the intensity of a televangelist. My neighbor, old Mr. Pedersen, told me she'd spent 20 minutes lecturing him about his garden gnomes being aesthetically inconsistent with neighborhood standards. I laughed it off then. I wasn't laughing anymore. The trouble started in March of 2024. I've just finished repainting my front door a beautiful slate blue. The same color my late wife had picked out from a magazine years ago, but we'd never gotten around to using. Sarah had passed away 2 years earlier, after a brief but brutal battle with cancer, and I was still finding ways to keep her memory alive in our home. Our daughter, Emma, now 15, had actually helped me paint the door on a sunny Saturday morning. She'd chosen the music, and we'd spent hours laughing and remembering her mother, while carefully applying each coat. The color was sophisticated, elegant, and according to the HOA guidelines I'd reviewed multiple times, perfectly acceptable. I'd even taken the rule book to the paint store and consulted with a color specialist there, a friendly woman named Maria who'd lived in an HOA community for 20 years. She'd confirmed that slate blue fell squarely within acceptable parameters. The rules stated doors could be painted in tasteful, subdued colors that complement the home's exterior. Our slate blue did exactly that, creating a lovely contrast with the gray siding and white trim. Emma loved the door. Every time she came home from school, she'd smile when she saw it. "Mom would have been so happy," she told me one afternoon, touching the smooth paint with her fingertips. That made all the careful preparation and painting worth it. It wasn't just a door anymore, it was a connection to the woman we both missed desperately. 3 days after I finished painting, I found the first notice tucked into my screen door. It was printed on expensive cardstock, with the HOA logo embossed at the top. Violation notice screamed in red letters across the page. According to Karen's signature at the bottom, my door color was inappropriate and not in compliance with community standards. Was given 14 days to repaint it. An approved color or face fines starting at $100 per day. I read the notice 3 times, my confusion growing with each pass. The language was formal and accusatory, treating me like a criminal rather than a homeowner who'd simply painted his door. $100 per day. For a door color, the absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so threatening. I immediately pulled out my copy of the HOA guidelines, a 43-page document I'd received when I first bought the house 12 years ago. I'd added to it over the years, as amendments were made, carefully filing each update. There it was, on page 17. Clear as day, subdued colors that complement the exterior were allowed. My slate blue was subdued. It complemented my gray siding perfectly. It took photos, printed out paint color charts, and even got a written statement from the painter confirming the color fell within standard subdued parameters. But I didn't stop there. I spent that evening building my case, printing examples of similar door colors in the neighborhood. I found 3 houses within a quarter-mile radius with doors in similar color families to mine. None of them had violation notices. When I showed Emma the violation notice that night over dinner, her eyes widened. "That's so unfair, Dad. Mom's door looks beautiful." "It is unfair," I agreed, "but we're going to handle this the right way. We're going to prove that we followed the rules." The next HOA meeting was held in the community center on a Thursday evening. I arrived early, my evidence folder under my arm, ready to clear up what I assumed was a simple misunderstanding. The community center was one of those multi-purpose rooms that smelled perpetually of coffee and old carpet, with folding chairs arranged in neat rows facing a long table where the board members sat. About 20 residents had shown up, which was more than usual. Several people gave me sympathetic nods as I took my seat. Barbara Martinez, the HOA president, was already there, arranging papers and looking slightly frazzled. Barbara was a blonde woman in her 50s with red glasses that matched her red blazer, and she'd been president for 8 years. She was fair, reasonable, and genuinely cared about the community. We'd served together on the Neighborhood Watch Committee, and had always respected her balanced approach to problems. She ran a small accounting business from home and brought that same meticulous attention to detail to her HOA responsibilities. Marquez, she greeted me warmly, though I noticed worry lines creasing her forehead. I saw the violation notice Karen issued. I want you to know I had some concerns about it. But Karen insisted it was cut and dry. Before I could respond, Karen swept into the room like she owned the place. She wore a designer pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, and her highlighted hair was styled in that aggressive way that seemed designed to intimidate. She carried a tablet and her own leather folder, and she didn't acknowledge anyone as she took her seat at the board table. The meeting was called to order at 7 o'clock sharp. Barbara went through the usual business: financial reports, upcoming neighborhood events, maintenance issues. Finally, we reached violations and compliance. Karen stood up, tablet in hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We have several violations to address this evening, but I'd like to start with the most egregious. Marcus June has painted his front door a color that violates our community aesthetic standards. I raised my hand. I'd like to address that, please. I have documentation showing. You'll have your chance to speak. Karen cut me off. First, let me present the facts. Our community has maintained certain standards that keep property values high and maintain our neighborhood's prestigious appearance. When residents decide their personal preferences are more important than community standards, it affects everyone. She tapped her tablet, and suddenly the wall screen lit up with a photo of my house. Except something was wrong. The blue of my door looked garish, almost neon, completely different from the sophisticated slate blue I'd actually painted it. As you can see, Karen continued, this color is loud, inappropriate, and frankly, an eyesore. It looks more suitable for a beach house than our refined community. That photo has been altered, I said, standing up. My voice was shaking, but I kept it controlled. That's not the actual color of my door. Barbara leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Karen, that does look unusually bright. Do you have the original photo? This is the original photo, Karen said smoothly. Perhaps the evening light makes it appear different in person, but photographs don't lie. This is how the door looks to people driving by, which is what matters for our community appearance. I pulled out my phone and held up my own photos, taken in various lighting conditions. Here are photos from different times of day. As you can see, the color is a subdued slate blue, well within HOA guidelines. Several people in the audience craned their necks to see. Mrs. Pedersen, who lived 2 doors down, spoke up. I walk past Marcus's house every day. The door is a nice, quiet blue. Nothing like that picture on the screen. Karen's expression tightened. I appreciate the input, but the board will make the final decision based on official documentation. My photograph was taken with a calibrated camera, specifically for HOA documentation purposes. Barbara looked uncomfortable. She glanced between Karen's doctored photos and my phone. I think we should table this until we can do an in-person inspection. Karen, would you and I be able to visit Marcus's property tomorrow to assess the color in person? That won't be necessary, Karen said crisply. The violation stands. I move that we uphold the fine schedule, as outlined in the notice. I'd like to second the president's suggestion for an in-person inspection first, said Tom Bradley, the third board member. Tom was a retired firefighter who'd always struck me as Karen's eyes flashed with irritation. Fine. But the inspection needs to happen quickly, and the fine schedule begins if the violation is confirmed. Barbara nodded, making notes. We'll do the inspection tomorrow afternoon. 3 o'clock work for you, Marcus? I'll be there, I said. The meeting moved on to other business, but I barely heard any of it. I was too busy watching Karen, who spent the rest of the meeting typing furiously on her tablet, occasionally shooting me looks that could freeze water. After the meeting, Barbara caught up with me in the parking lot. The evening air was cool, and the parking lot lights cast long shadows across the asphalt. "Marcus, I want to apologize," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we were alone. "That photo Karen showed was clearly manipulated. Your door is beautiful, and it's absolutely within guidelines." "So what happens tomorrow?" I asked. Barbara sighed, adjusting her red glasses. "Tom and I will come by, document that the color is compliant, and overturn the violation. Karen won't like it, but she's outvoted 2-1. "Why is she doing this?" I asked. "I've never done anything to her." "Between you and me?" Barbara lowered her voice even further. "I think Karen has her sights set on the presidency. She's been systematically building cases against people she sees as potential obstacles. You're well liked in the community. You've got a good reputation, and people listen to you. She's trying to undermine that." A chill ran down my spine. "That's crazy." "That's Karen," Barbara said grimly. "Just be careful, okay? Keep documenting everything. Save every email, every notice, take photos, record conversations if you can. I've seen her type before, and they don't give up easily." I drove home that night feeling unsettled. Barbara's warning echoed in my mind. I'd thought this was just a simple misunderstanding, an overzealous board member being too strict about rules. But if Barbara was right, this was something much more calculated and dangerous. The next afternoon, I took the day off work and waited at home. At exactly 3 o'clock, Barbara's silver sedan pulled into my driveway, followed by Tom's pickup truck. I met them at the front door, my beautiful, perfectly appropriate slate blue door. Barbara pulled out an official-looking color meter. "We'll do this by the book," she said, giving me a reassuring smile. She held the device against the door, took several readings, and photographed the display. Tom took his own photos with his phone from various angles. "Slate blue," Barbara confirmed, showing me the color meter reading Pantone 535C, which falls well within the subdued, complementary color category. "You're in full compliance, Marcus." Relief flooded through me. "So the violation is dismissed?" "Absolutely," Tom said firmly. "I'll make sure it's documented in your file. There won't be any fines." They were about to leave when Karen's BMW pulled up to the curb. She got out, her expression thunderous. "What's going on here?" she demanded, stalking up my driveway. This was supposed to be an official inspection by the board, not a friendly social call. It was an official inspection, Barbara said calmly, holding up her clipboard. "And we've determined that Marcus is in full compliance with HOA guidelines. The violation is dismissed." Karen's face flushed red. "That's absurd. The color clearly violates. The only thing that was clearly violated was proper documentation procedures." Tom interrupted. "That photo you showed at the meeting was altered. This door is fine, Karen." For a moment, Karen looked like she might explode. Then her expression shifted, becoming cold and controlled. Effie. "Well, President Martinez, Mr. Bradley, I hope you're prepared to explain to the homeowners why you're allowing violations to slide. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your selective enforcement." She turned on her heel and left, but not before giving me a look that made my blood run cold. It was a look that said this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Barbara touched my arm. "Document everything," she whispered. "Starting now." I watched Karen's BMW disappear around the corner, and a feeling of dread settled in my stomach. I'd won this battle, but something told me the war was just beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, I got up for some water and noticed something strange through my kitchen window. A figure was standing at the edge of my property, barely visible in the shadows, holding what looked like a camera. As I moved closer to the window, the figure quickly retreated into the darkness. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from the HOA, sent at 2:03 a.m. The subject line made my heart sink. Emergency violation notice, immediate compliance required. I opened it with shaking hands. Has your HOA ever targeted you unfairly? Have you dealt with a board member who abused their power? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear how you fought back. The emergency violation notice glowed on my phone screen like a threat. Unauthorized vehicle storage, immediate removal required. My hands shook as I read the details. According to the notice sent at 2:03 in the morning, my late father's vintage 1972 Harley-Davidson motorcycle, parked in my own driveway, was now considered an unsightly commercial vehicle that violated newly updated parking regulations. Newly updated. The words sent ice through my veins. I rushed to my home office, nearly tripping over my own feet in my haste. My laptop took an agonizing 30 seconds to boot up, 30 seconds during which my mind raced through worst-case scenarios. My father had spent countless hours restoring that motorcycle. Every piece had been carefully sourced. Every part lovingly maintained. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a testament to his patience, his skill, his love of craftsmanship. And now someone was trying to take it away from me in the middle of the night. I pulled up the HOA website on my laptop, my heart pounding. There, uploaded at 1:58 a.m., just 5 minutes before the violation notice was sent, was an amendment to the parking regulations. The change was buried in paragraph 7 of section 3. Motorcycles, recreational vehicles, commercial vehicles, and trailers must be stored in closed garages and may not be visible from the street at any time. Old rule had only prohibited commercial vehicles and trailers. Someone had added motorcycles and RVs to the list, and that someone had done it in the middle of the night, immediately before issuing me a violation. I grabbed my phone and called Barbara. It rang 4 times before she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Marcus, it's 2:30 in the morning. What's wrong?" "Karen just sent me an emergency violation notice about my father's motorcycle," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Barbara, she changed the parking rules at 2 in the morning and then immediately cited me for violating them." There was a long pause. I could hear Barbara moving, probably sitting up in bed. "Say, did what?" "Check the HOA website. There's a new amendment uploaded at 1:58 a.m. /motorcycles are now banned from driveways." I heard typing on Barbara's end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God. Marcus, I never approved this amendment. Changes to HOA. Regulations require a board vote. Karen can't just unilaterally change the rules." "Apparently she can," I said bitterly, "and she's demanding I remove the motorcycle within 24 hours or face a $500 per day fine." "This is absolutely not happening," Barbara said, and I could hear the anger rising in her voice. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow evening. Do not move that motorcycle, do you arme. This amendment is invalid, and so is the violation." What if she tries to have it towed? The thought made me sick. That motorcycle was one of the last connections I had to my father, who'd passed away just 6 months ago. He'd restored it himself over 5 years, and he'd left it to me in his will. "She won't," Barbara said firmly. "She'd need board approval for that, and she doesn't have it. I'll send out an email, first thing in the morning, invalidating this amendment and the violation." Tried to get some sleep, but I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, watching my driveway, making sure no tow trucks appeared. The motorcycle gleamed under the streetlight, its chrome reflecting pools of light. My father had been so proud of that bike. He'd taken me 4 rides on it when I was Emma's age. Wind in our faces, the engine roaring beneath us. At 6 in the morning, I went outside to check on it. The dew was heavy on the grass, and my breath came out in small clouds in the cool air. That's when I noticed the new detail that made my blood boil. Someone had placed an orange sticker on the seat. "Violation, unauthorized vehicle tow warning." The sticker was the kind that left residue when removed, deliberately chosen to damage the vintage leather seat. I took photos from every angle, making sure to capture the timestamp. Then I remembered Michael Torres's cameras. I called him immediately, not caring that it was barely past 6 in the morning. "Marquez, you okay, man?" Michael answered on the second ring. Can you check your security footage from last night? Between 2 and 3 a.m. Sure. Give me a minute. I heard clicking. Then Michael swore softly. Holy hell! Marcus, Karen was at your house at 2:15. She's the one who put that sticker on your bike. Can you send me that footage? Already emailing it to you. Marcus, this is Bud. She's stalking your property in the middle of the night. The video showed everything. Karen's BMW pulling up at 2:13 a.m. Karen getting out with a flashlight and the orange sticker. Karen taking photos of the motorcycle from multiple angles. Karen placing the sticker on the seat. All of it time-stamped and crystal clear. I forwarded the video to Barbara immediately, along with screenshots showing the timeline. Amendment uploaded at 1:58 a.m. Violation notice sent at 2:03 a.m. Karen physically at my property at 2:30 a.m. Barbara's response came within minutes. Emergency board meeting tonight at 7 p.m. Bring all documentation. This ends. Now I took the day off work. Too wired to focus on code. Emma came downstairs for breakfast and immediately noticed my expression. Dad, what happened? I showed her the notice and explained about the motorcycle. Her eyes filled with tears. Grandpa's bike? She's trying to take away Grandpa's bike. She's trying, I said, pulling her into a hug. But she's not going to succeed. We're going to fight this. The day crawled by. I spent hours documenting everything. Printing the original parking regulations, the new amendment, the violation notice, the security footage, screenshots of the times. I created a presentation with a timeline showing the sequence of events. I even researched HOA law in our state and found multiple precedents establishing that unilateral rule changes without board votes were invalid. At 6:30, I headed to the community center. This time, Emma came with me. I want to be there, she'd said firmly. That's my grandpa's bike, too. The parking lot was packed. Word had spread about the emergency meeting, and at least 40 residents had shown up. I saw Mr. Patterson, the Johnsons, Michael Torres, Mrs. Chun from the corner house, the Rodrigo family, and dozens of others. Many of them had vehicles that could potentially be affected by Karen's new rule motorcycles, a vintage Corvette, several boats on trailers. Inside, the tension was palpable. Barbara sat at the board table, looking furious, her red glasses catching the harsh fluorescent light. Tom Bradley sat beside her, his arms crossed, jaw tight. Karen sat at the far end, perfectly composed in a cream-colored suit, her tablet in front of her as always. Barbara called the meeting to order at exactly 7 o'clock. We're here to address an unauthorized amendment to our parking regulations that was uploaded to the HOA website last night without board approval. She turned to face Karen directly. Karen, did you upload an amendment at 1:58 a.m. this morning? Kara smiled coolly. Viv. As compliance officer, I have the authority to clarify and update regulations as needed to maintain community standards. You have the authority to enforce existing regulations. Tom interrupted. You do not have the authority to create new ones without a board vote. I didn't create anything new, Karen said smoothly. I simply clarified the existing commercial vehicle restriction to include motorcycles, which are often used commercially. Marcus's motorcycle is a vintage personal vehicle, Barbara said. It has nothing to do with commercial use. That's your interpretation, Karen replied. My interpretation is that all motorcycles represent a degradation of community aesthetics and property values. I stood up, my presentation folder in hand. May I address the board? Barbara nodded. Please do, Marcus. I walked to the front, connecting my laptop to the projector. My hands were steadier now. Anger had burned away the nervousness. The first slide showed the timeline I'd created, with timestamps highlighted in red. At 1:58 a.m., an amendment was uploaded to the HOA website. At 2:03 a.m., I received a violation notice. At 2:13 a.m., Karen Whitmore was physically at my property, placing a violation sticker on my motorcycle. I have security footage. I played Michael's video. The room was dead silent as everyone watched Karen skulking around my driveway in the middle of the night. You could see everything clearly under the streetlights. Karen's BMW pulling up, Karen getting out and looking around furtively, Karen approaching the motorcycle with her flashlight, Karen peeling the backing off the sticker, Karen pressing it onto the vintage leather seat, Karen taking photos. The timestamp in the corner of the video was damning. When the video ended, I advanced to my next slide. This demonstrates a pattern. First, my door color was targeted using a manipulated photo. When that failed, my motorcycle was targeted using an invalid rule change created specifically to cite me for a violation. The timeline shows the security footage shows trespassing. This isn't about community standards. This is targeted harassment, pure and simple. I showed more slides, screenshots of the original regulations, the altered regulations, side-by-side comparisons showing exactly what had been changed. Every slide was meticulously documented. Every source cited. My software engineering background had taught me the value of thorough documentation. Several people in the audience murmured agreement. Mr. Pedersen stood up. I have a question for the board. How many other rule changes has Karen made without board approval? Barbara pulled out a thick folder. I spent today reviewing every update made to our HOA website in the past 6 months. Karen has made 17 unauthorized amendments. 17, all of them conveniently target specific homeowners who've disagreed with her proposals. The room erupted. People started shouting questions. Mrs. Johnson stood up, waving a paper. She cited me for having my trash cans visible from the street, but the rule she quoted doesn't exist in my copy of the regulations. Same here, called out someone from the back. She said my garden gnomes violated height restrictions, but when I checked the actual rules, there was no height restriction. Barbara raised her hands for quiet. This is exactly why we're here. The board, that is, Tom and I, are moving to invalidate all 17 unauthorized amendments and dismiss all associated violation notices. We're also removing Karen Whitmore from her position as compliance officer, effective immediately. You can't do that. Karen shot to her feet, her composure finally cracking. I've done more for this community in 6 months than you've done in 8 years. Property values have increased because of my enforcement. Property values have increased because the housing market is strong, Tom said flatly. Your enforcement has done nothing but create conflict and division. You're done, Karen. Barbara held up a document. I moved to remove Karen Whitmore as compliance officer for abuse of authority and unauthorized modification of HOA regulations. Tom seconded, Tom said immediately. All in favor? Aye, Barbara and Tom said in unison. Opposed? Karen stood frozen, her face white with fury. This isn't over. I'll sue the HOA. I'll sue all of you personally. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, we do, Barbara said calmly. We know you've been involved in similar conflicts in 2 previous HOA communities. We know you tried to sue one of them and lost. We know your pattern, Karen, and it stops here. Karen grabbed her tablet and stormed toward the exit. As she passed my seat, she leaned down and hissed, "You think you've won? This is just beginning." Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her with a bang that echoed through the silent room. Barbara stood up, and spontaneous applause broke out. She raised her hands, a tired smile on her face. Let's not celebrate too early. We still have a lot of work to do. All affected homeowners should see me after the meeting to have your violation notices officially dismissed. And we're implementing new procedures to prevent this from ever happening again. All rule changes will require full board approval with proper notice and community input. After the meeting, Emma and I walked to our car through the cool evening air. She squeezed my hand. You did it, Dad. You protected Grandpa's bike. We did it, I corrected. The whole community did it. But as I started the car, I couldn't shake Karen's final words. This is just beginning. I wanted to believe she was just making empty threats, but something in her eyes had been deeply unsettling. The next morning confirmed my fears. I woke up to find 3 official-looking envelopes shoved through my mail slot. My hands trembled as I opened them. The first was from a law firm, notice of intent to sue for defamation and harassment. The second was from the county code enforcement, Complaint filed, property inspection required. The third was from my insurance company. Coverage review. Claim investigation. Someone had filed false claims against me with multiple agencies and hired a lawyer to threaten legal action. I didn't need to guess who my phone rang. It was Barbara, and she sounded stressed. Marcus, I got legal threats too. So did Tom. And apparently code enforcement received anonymous complaints about 15 different properties in the neighborhood, all owned by people who spoke against Karen at the meeting. I sank onto my couch, staring at the legal papers spread across my coffee table. She's retaliating against everyone. We need to document everything and possibly get our own lawyer, Barbara said. This is way beyond typical HOA drama. Marcus, Karen isn't just difficult, she's dangerous. That afternoon, I came home from a meeting with a lawyer to find Emma standing in our driveway, her phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. Dad, she said, her voice breaking. So Monet spray-painted Grandpa's motorcycle, and they slashed both tires. I ran to the bike, my heart in my throat. Across the beautiful chrome tank, in bright red paint, were 2 words. You're next. Has someone ever retaliated against you for standing up for your rights? How did you handle threats and intimidation? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone else facing similar harassment. The red spray paint gleamed weightily in the afternoon sun. You're next. 2 words that transformed my father's beloved motorcycle from a cherished heirloom into a crime scene. Emma stood beside me, her phone still recording, tears streaming down her face, but her hand steady. My 15-year-old daughter had the presence of mind to document everything before I even arrived. I heard the noise from my bedroom, she said, her voice shaking. Someone spray painting. I looked out the window and saw a person in dark clothes running away. They were wearing a black hoodie and dark pants. I grabbed my phone and came down, but they were already gone, dead. I'm so sorry. I should have yelled, should have scared them away. You did exactly right, I said, pulling her close. My heart was racing. The thought of Emma confronting whoever did this made me sick. You stayed safe, and you documented it. That's perfect, sweetheart. You were so smart. But inside, my blood was boiling. This wasn't just about the motorcycle anymore. Whoever did this had crossed a line that couldn't be They hadn't just vandalized property. They'd come to my home in the middle of the afternoon, when they knew a teenage girl might be alone. They'd terrorized my daughter. This was personal warfare now. I looked at the motorcycle my father's pride and joy. He'd bought it as a rusted wreck at an estate sale 20 years ago and spent 5 years restoring it. I could still remember him in his garage every weekend, carefully cleaning each part, hunting down original components, teaching me about engines and craftsmanship and patience. He'd taken me on my first ride when I was Emma's age. That motorcycle represented hundreds of hours of love and dedication, and someone had destroyed it in minutes out of spite. I called 911 immediately. While we waited for the police, I took my own photos and videos. The slashed tires, the spray paint dripping down the chrome tank, the scratches someone had deliberately carved into the leather seat, thousands of dollars in damage. But more than that, an irreplaceable piece of my father's legacy, defaced and destroyed. Officer Davis arrived within 15 minutes, a middle-aged cop with kind eyes and a thorough approach to documentation. He took statements from both Emma and me, photographed everything from multiple angles, and even found paint droplets on our driveway that had dripped from the spray can. These droplets are good evidence, he said. We might be able to match them to a specific can. Did you notice anyone suspicious in the neighborhood today? Emma spoke up. There was a car parked down the street this morning. A dark blue sedan. I noticed it because someone was sitting in it. But when I came home, it was gone. Officer Davis made a note. Good observation. Did you get a plate number? No. I'm sorry. That's okay. You've been very helpful. He turned back to me. Any idea who might have done this? I hesitated for only a moment. I have a very strong suspicion. I pulled out my phone and showed him everything. The door violation, the manipulative photo, the midnight rule change, the security footage of Karen at my property, the board meeting removal, the legal threats that had arrived that morning. Officer Davis's expression grew more serious as he reviewed each piece of evidence. This is a pattern of escalating harassment. Have you felt threatened by this person? Yes, Emma said before I could answer. Sid told my dad this is just beginning last night. And now this happened. Officer Davis nodded slowly. I'm going to file this as felony vandalism and harassment. The property damage alone puts this over the threshold. I'm also going to recommend a restraining order. Do you have an attorney? I met with one this morning, I said, about the legal threats Karen sent. Good. Give them all this information. In the meantime, I'd suggest installing security cameras if you don't have them already. Based on this pattern, I don't think this person is done. After Officer Davis left, I called Barbara. She answered on the first ring. Marcus, I heard. Michael Torres texted me. How bad is it? Bad. Emma's terrified. The bike is probably going to cost thousands to repair, if it even can be repaired. And Barbara, Emma saw someone running away. Whoever did this came to my property in broad daylight while my daughter was home alone. Barbara's voice turned hard. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. We're voting to ban Karen from all HOA property and functions. And I'm contacting our HOA attorney about filing our own charges. This has gone way beyond HOA disputes. That evening, I sat down with Emma to talk about security. We're installing cameras tonight, I told her, and I'm going to teach you some safety protocols. But Em, I need you to know something. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. I know, she said quietly. But Dad, I'm scared. What if they come back? What if they try to hurt you? I didn't have a good answer for that. So instead, I held my daughter and let her cry. And I made a silent promise to my late wife that I would protect our child no matter what it took. Michael Torres came over that night with his brother, who owned a security company. Within 3 hours, they'd installed 8 high-definition cameras covering every angle of my property, all feeding to a cloud storage system that would preserve footage, even if someone tried to destroy the equipment. No one's getting near your place without us knowing about it, Michael said firmly. And Marcus, a bunch of us neighbors have been talking. We're forming a neighborhood watch, specifically for your house. Someone will be keeping an eye out 24/7 until this is resolved. I was overwhelmed by the support. Mrs. Patterson brought over a casserole. The Johnsons offered to pick Emma up from school every day so she wouldn't come home to an empty house. Mr. Rodrigo, who is a contractor, offered to help repair the motorcycle at cost. But the next morning brought new problems. I woke up to get Emma ready for school and found my car had been booted one of those yellow wheel locks that parking enforcement uses. Attached was a notice from a private parking enforcement company claiming my vehicle was illegally parked in my own driveway and demanding a $300 fee for removal. I stood there in my bathrobe, staring at the boot in disbelief. Emma came out to see what was taking me so long. Dad, what is that? Someone put a parking boot on our car. Can they do that? This is our house. No, they can't. But someone's trying to make our lives as difficult as possible. I called the number on the notice. A bored-sounding woman answered. Metropolitan Parking Solutions. I need this boot removed from my car. It's in my own driveway on private property. You were parked in violation of posted signage. Fee is $300 for removal. What posted signage? This is my private property. I own this house. There was a pause. Our records show proper signage was posted as required by the property manager. I don't have a property manager. This is a single-family home that I own. Sir, you'll need to take that up with whoever requested the service. We were hired to enforce parking violations at your address. Who hired you? I'm not at liberty to say client confidentiality. I hung up and took photos of the boot and notice. Then I walked around my property looking for any posted signage. I found it in my flower bed, partially hidden behind a bush, a small metal sign that read nitrogen monoxide parking violators will be booted in tiny letters. The sign was brand new, still had the price sticker on the back, and was positioned where it would be almost impossible to see, unless you were specifically looking for it. Someone had planted it there, then called a booting company and lied about me violating their fake sign. I called my attorney, Sarah Mitchell, who I'd hired the day before to handle all the legal threats. She listened to the whole story, then sighed heavily. "Marcus, this is textbook harassment, but here's the problem. Each individual incident is relatively minor. The boot company will say they were hired in good faith. The vandalism is serious, but unless you have direct proof of who did it, the police investigation could take months. The legal threats are just threats at this point. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. So what do? We document everything, and we file for a restraining order. I'm also going to send a cease-and-desist letter to Karen Whitmore and her attorney. But Marcus, I want you to be prepared. People like this don't stop easily. It often gets worse before it gets better." The emergency HOA board meeting that afternoon was tense. Barbara had her attorney present, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Park who specialized in HOA law. Tom Bradley was there, looking grim. About 30 residents showed up, including everyone who'd been targeted by Karen's fake violations. Barbara called the meeting to order. "We're here to address the ongoing harassment of community members by former board member Karen Whit. Our attorney has advised us that the HOA has both the authority and the responsibility to take action when a member is threatening the safety and well-being of other members." Jennifer Park stood up. "I've reviewed all the documentation provided by affected residents. Karen Whitmore's behavior constitutes a pattern of harassment, trespassing, and potentially criminal activity. Under your HOA bylaws, the board has the authority to suspend or ban members who pose a threat to community safety. I recommend immediate action. I move that we ban Karen Whitmore from all HOA common areas and functions for a period of 1 year, pending a full investigation," Barbara said. "Seconded," Tom said immediately. "All in favor." Every hand in the room went up, except, one surprisingly, Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who'd been in the neighborhood for 30 years, opposed. Mrs. Henderson raised her hand hesitantly. "I just worry about setting a precedent. What if someone uses this to ban people they simply don't like?" Jennifer Park addressed her directly. "That's a valid concern, Mrs. Henderson. That's why this requires a board vote with proper documentation of threats to safety. It's not about liking or disliking someone. It's about documented harassment and criminal activity." Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. "Then I changed my vote. I'm in favor." The motion passed unanimously. But as we were leaving, Barbara's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and her face went pale. "Marcus, we have a problem." She showed me her phone. It was an email from Karen's attorney with an attachment. A lawsuit filing. Karen was suing the HOA for wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. She was seeking $500,000 in damages. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the lawsuit was a separate document. Karen was also suing me personally for defamation, harassment, and conspiracy, seeking an additional $250,000. "She's trying to bankrupt us," Barbara said quietly. "The HOA and you, individually. Even if she loses, the legal fees alone could be devastating." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $250,000. I didn't have that kind of money. Even if I sold my house, I'd barely cover it, and the legal fees to defend myself could easily run $50,000 or more. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Emma, staring at the lawsuit paperwork Sarah Mitchell had couriered over. Emma had been doing her homework, but had noticed my expression. "Dad, what's wrong?" I didn't want to burden her with this, but she deserved to know. "Karen is suing me. A lot of money. Even if we win, the legal fees are going to be very expensive." Emma's eyes widened. "Are we going to lose the house?" "No," I said firmly, with more confidence than I felt. "We're not losing the house. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. But it might be tight for a while. No summer vacation this year. Probably. Maybe we'll need to cut back on some things." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Tensei side Mom wouldn't want you to back down. She always said you should stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." She was right. Sarah had always been the moral compass of our family. She'd been a social worker who fought for kids who had no one else fighting for them. She'd taught me that sometimes the right thing is also the hard thing. And you do it anyway. You're absolutely right, I said. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight back. The next morning, I got a call from Officer Davis. Mr. Chun, we got a hit on the paint used in the vandalism. It's a specialty graffiti paint, not commonly available. Only 3 stores in the county carry it. That's great. Primera Sa'ith. Can you check their security footage? Already on it. I've got requests out to all 3. If the person who bought it used a credit card, we'll have them. I should know something in the next few days. There was a pause. Then Officer Davis continued. I also wanted to let you know we've been doing some checking on Karen Whitmore. She has a history. 3 restraining orders in 2 different states, all from neighbors or HOA members. This is a pattern with her. Can that help us? It helps establish a history of similar behavior. Your attorney can use it. And it means we're taking this very seriously. That afternoon, I was in my home office working or trying to work when Emma called from downstairs. Dad, there's someone at the door. I looked at the security camera feed on my computer. A man in a suit was standing on my porch holding an official-looking folder. My stomach sank. More legal papers. I answered the door cautiously. Yes. The man smiled. Marcus Chun. I'm Detective Raymond Shaw with the County Prosecutor's Office. I'd like to talk to you about Karen Whitmore. Detective Shaw opened his folder and pulled out a photo. Do you recognize this woman? It was a picture of Karen, but younger, with different hair. Her real name isn't Karen it's Kieran Westfield. And Mr. Chun, she's wanted in 2 states for fraud, extortion, and identity theft. We've been tracking her for 3 years, and you just helped us find her. Have you ever discovered someone wasn't who they claimed to be? Has someone's harassment campaign turned out to be part of a bigger criminal pattern? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Detective Shaw stood on my porch, holding a photo of a woman who looked like Karen but wasn't quite Karen. Same face, different hair, different name. Her real name isn't Karen it's Karen Westfield. And Mr. Chun, she's wanted in 2 states for fraud, extortion, and identity theft. We've been tracking her for 3 years, and you just helped us find her. I stood there frozen for a moment, trying to process what he'd just said. Karen wasn't even Karen. Everything about her was a lie. I invited Detective Shaw inside, my mind reeling. Emma was at school, so at least she wouldn't have to hear this part. Not yet. I'd need to figure out how to explain it to a 15-year-old. That the woman who'd been terrorizing us was actually a career criminal with multiple identities. Shaw sat at my kitchen table and opened a thick folder stuffed with documents, photos, and official reports. Karen Westfield has been running the same scam across multiple states for over a decade. She buys property in upscale HOA communities using various aliases and shell corporations. Then she gets herself elected to the HOA board. She's very charismatic when she wants to be, very convincing, and starts a campaign of harassment against specific residents. Usually successful, well-liked people who might oppose her or who have significant assets. But why? I asked, sinking into the chair across from him. What's the point of all this? The harassment, the fake violations, the middle-of-the-night rule changes. Money Shaw said simply, pulling out a financial document covered in highlighted numbers. It's always about money. She files fake violations, imposes ilegal fines, and when people fight back, she sues them personally and sues the HOA. Most people can't afford to fight a $250,000 lawsuit, so they settle. She typically gets $50,000 to $100,000 per settlement, sometimes more. She targets 2 or 3 victims per community, collects her settlements, then moves to the next community before anyone realizes the pattern or connects the dots. My stomach turned. How many people has she done this to? We've confirmed at least 23 victims across 6 states over 12 years. But we think there are more who never reported it. Shaw pulled out more documents. In Oregon, she targeted a retired teacher named Robert Martinez. He ended up losing his house because he couldn't afford the legal fees. In Arizona, she went after a single mother who'd just survived cancer. The woman had to declare bankruptcy. In Nevada, a veteran with PTSD became her target. He's still paying off the legal debt 5 years later. I felt sick. All those people, all those lives, destroyed. Why hasn't she been caught before now? She's careful, Shaw said. She uses different names, changes her appearance slightly, buys properties through LLCs. She spaces out her moves, so patterns are harder to spot. And honestly, local police departments don't always connect HOA disputes to criminal fraud. It looks like civil matters, so they stay out of it. So what changed? Shaw smiled grimly. You did. You documented everything. You got security footage. You involved your neighbors. You created a paper trail that was impossible to ignore. When Officer Davis ran her name through our database after the vandalism report, it triggered an alert. We've had her on our watch list, but she'd been using the Whitmore alias in states we hadn't connected yet. Your case gave us the link we needed. What happens now? Now we arrest her. We have warrants from 2 states, and we're adding charges from your case: vandalism, harassment, trespassing, fraud, extortion, with all the evidence you've collected, plus testimony from the other victims we've been tracking. She's looking at serious prison time, 10 to 15 years. Minimum. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this. Karen Westfield, wasn't just a difficult neighbor or an overzealous HOA board member. She was a career criminal who'd been destroying lives for over a decade. Will I still have to fight her lawsuits? I asked. Her attorney will likely drop them once she's arrested, and even if they don't, these lawsuits are part of the criminal fraud scheme. They'll be dismissed. You're not going to lose your house, Mr. Chun. You're going to get your life back. Shaw stewed up. We're moving on her today. We wanted to let you know first. Since you're the reason we found her, there will be some media attention. Probably. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Emma, about my neighbors, about my father's vandalized motorcycle, whatever it takes to make sure she can't hurt anyone else. Good answer. Shaw handed me his card. You'll need to give a formal statement in the next few days, and you might be called to testify at trial. But Mr. Chun, you did the right thing. You fought back when most people would have given up. You should be proud of that. After Shaw left, I called Barbara immediately. She answered on the first ring. Marcus? What's going on? There are police cars in front of Karen's house. Barbara, sit down. I need to tell you something. I explained everything Shaw had told me. Barbara was silent for a long moment after I finished. Oh my God, she finally said. All those people. Marcus, we let her onto our board. We gave her access to everyone's information, their addresses, their finances, ... Double quotes you couldn't have known, I said. She's been doing this for years. She's a professional con artist. But I should have checked her background more carefully. I should have. Barbara's voice broke. I'm the president. It was my responsibility. Barbara, listen to me. You're the one who stood up to her when she started abusing her power. You're the one who called the emergency meetings. You protected the community. Without you backing me up, I might have been just another one of her victims. Thank you, Barbara said quietly. That means a lot. I just... I keep thinking about all the people she hurt before she got here. Me too, but she's not going to hurt anyone else now. The arrest happened that afternoon. I watched from my window as 4 police cars surrounded Karen's mansion. Detective Shaw and 3 other officers approached the door. When Karen answered, she tried to maintain her composure, but you could see the moment she realized it was over. Her shoulders slumped. Her face went pale. She didn't resist as they put her in handcuffs and led her to the police car. Neighbors came out of their houses, watching in stunned silence. Mrs. Patterson stood on her porch with her hand over her mouth. Michael Torres stood in his driveway, shaking his head in disbelief. The Johnsons were recording on their phones, making sure this moment was documented. As the police cars drove away with Karen in the back seat, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. It was over. Really over. That evening, the story broke on the local news. HOA board member arrested in multi-state fraud CM. They showed footage of Karen's arrest, interviews with Detective Shaw, and even included a brief clip of me saying I was glad justice was being served. My phone started ringing immediately. Reporters wanted interviews. Other HOA fraud victims wanted to share their stories. It was overwhelming. Emma came home from school, having heard about it from her friends who'd seen it on social media. "Dad, everyone's saying Karen was a criminal. Is it true?" I sat her down and explained everything in terms she could understand. She was hurting people on purpose, for money. She did it to a lot of people before she came here, but she's been caught now, and she's going to jail. "Good," Emma said fiercely. "She deserved it. She hurt Grandpa's bike. She scared us." "I know, sweetheart. But it's over now. We're safe." Emma hugged me tight. "You were really brave, Dad. Mom would be proud of you." That made me tear up. I think she would be proud of both of us. "You were brave, too. Remember? You documented the vandalism. You testified to the police. You're pretty amazing, kid." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The lawsuits were dismissed, just as Detective Shaw had predicted. Karen's attorney withdrew from all cases and refused to comment to the press. The HOA held a community meeting where Barbara formally apologized for not vetting Karen more carefully, though everyone agreed she'd done everything right once the problems became apparent. More importantly, victims from other states started coming forward. The retired teacher from Oregon, the cancer survivor from Arizona, the veteran from Nevada. Detective Shaw put me in touch with them, and we formed a support network. We shared our stories, our evidence, our strategies for recovering from what Karen had done to us. It felt good to turn our pain into something constructive. The insurance company covering my father's motorcycle came through with a settlement of $12,000 for the damage. Mr. Rodrigo and I spent 3 weekends carefully restoring the bike to its original condition. It wasn't quite the same. It would never be exactly as my father had left it, but it was close. And working on it with my hands, fixing what Karen had tried to destroy, felt therapeutic. Barbara was re-elected as HOA president unanimously at the next meeting. She immediately implemented new background check requirements for all board members and created an oversight committee to prevent any single person from wielding too much power. She also worked with the HOA attorney to create new procedures for handling disputes fairly. We learned some hard lessons, Barbara said at the meeting, her red glasses catching the light as she looked around the room. "But we're going to make sure this never happens again. Not in our community. Not to our neighbors. Not on my watch." The applause was thunderous. People stood up, cheering. Barbara had always been a good president, but now she was a hero. 3 months later, Detective Shaw called with an update. Karen Westfield pleaded guilty to avoid trial. She got 12 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for at least 8 years. She also has to make restitution to all identified victims. "Will that actually happen?" I asked. "The restitution." "She has assets hidden in various accounts. We've been seizing them. You'll probably see some money eventually, though likely not the full amount. But Mr. Chun, the important thing is she's behind bars. She can't hurt anyone else." "Thank you, Detective Shaw, for everything. Thank you, Mr. Chun. Citizens like you make my job possible." Most people don't fight back against people like Karen. They just try to survive and move on. You didn't just survive, you helped to stop her completely. That summer, Emma and I took my father's restored motorcycle for a ride through the countryside. The engine hummed beneath us, the wind in our faces, the sun warm on our backs. Emma held on tight, laughing as we took the curves. "This is awesome, Dad," she shouted over the engine noise. "Can we do this again?" "Anytime you want, sweetheart," I called back. "Anytime you want." As we rode, I thought about everything that had happened. The door violation that started it all, the midnight motorcycle citation, the vandalism and threats, the lawsuits and fear. It had been the hardest 6 months of my life since losing Sarah, but we'd gotten through it. More than that, we'd won. Kerem had tried to drive me out of my home, to bankrupt him, to terrorize my family. She'd tried to break me like she'd broken so many others before, but she'd underestimated 2 things: my determination to protect my daughter and my home, and the power of a community that stands together. Because that's what really beat Karen in the end. Not just me fighting back, but Barbara standing up to her, Tom refusing to go along with her schemes, Michael providing security footage, the Pattersons and the Johnsons and the Rodrigo family and dozens of other neighbors supporting us, protecting us, refusing to let her divide us. An HOA is supposed to be a community. Karen had tried to turn it into her personal extortion operation, but we'd taken it back. We'd reminded ourselves what it meant to actually be neighbors, to look out for each other, to stand up for what's right, to fight back when someone tries to hurt us. When we got home that evening, Emma helped me wipe down the motorcycle and cover it carefully in the garage. "Same time next weekend?" she asked hopefully. "It's a date," I said, ruffling her hair. As I closed the garage door, I took one last look at the bike. My father would have been proud of how it turned out. Moritantat. He would have been proud of how we'd handled everything. He'd always taught me to stand up to bullies, to never back down when you're in the right, to protect the people you love no matter what it costs. I'd done that. Em and I had both done that. And we'd won. I walked into my house. Through the front door, my beautiful slate blue front door that had started this whole mess premeta, smiled at Italiano. Karen had hated that door, had tried to use it as a weapon against me. Now it stood as a reminder. I'd painted it for Sarah. I'd defended it against injustice. And I'd won the right to keep it exactly as it was. Inside, Emma was making dinner pasty with sauce. Nothing fancy, but made with love. We ate together at the kitchen table, laughing about something silly that had happened at her soccer practice. Just a normal evening, in a normal house, in a normal neighborhood. Except we knew better now. We knew that normal could be fragile. We knew that bullies existed, and they sometimes wore expensive suits and hid behind official-looking paperwork. We knew that injustice could happen anywhere, even in a quiet suburban HOA community. But we also knew that we were strong enough to fight back, that communities could stand together, that justice, though sometimes slow, could still win in the end. And we knew that our home, this house with its slate blue door, this neighborhood with its caring neighbors, this community that had learned to stand together, was worth fighting for. This story is over, but the fight against HOA abuse continues. If you're dealing with harassment from your HOA or a neighbor, document everything. Get security cameras. Involve your community. And never be afraid to stand up for what's right. Sometimes the person abusing power is hiding darker secrets than you imagine. Have you ever had to fight back against injustice in your community? Share your victory story in the comments and inspire others to stand strong.